start. Your- Bienvenido, welcome. I'm in Survivor Español mode. Welcome to our mental health workshop. I hope you guys enjoy it. We're just gonna let some more people come in to get started. But if you would like in the chat to introduce yourselves, we'd be happy to meet you. Or if you want to talk right now, you can unmute yourself.
Hi, Marcella.
Thank you for letting me know about the meeting today.
You're welcome. Beautiful view in the background.
Ah, it's the trees and the birds. They're going to bed now.
So, what should we wait one more minute,
Let's give
Paula? Yeah.
Yeah, let's give one more
Yeah.
minute. We
All right.
to see if someone else comes on. If not, we'll just go ahead. Kind of excited. Drinking water, Patty. I'm following.
Yes, I'm right
Ah,
here.
okay. Water, aqua.
Agua.
Oh wow.
Yes, Dr. Lillian. Yes.
So
Yes. Good, Tamika. Yeah, I was gonna say, Tamika, you're drinking water. I'm gonna make it my business to remind you every day.
and she does very good at that.
Okay, so we'll start. Yes,
Yes.
we're recording. So, good evening, everyone, and welcome to Building Resilience Strategies for Mental Health Wellbeing. This is our Survivor Slim Down third workshop of the year. If you're interested in watching prior workshops, you can find them at Survivor TV on YouTube. Let me introduce myself. My name is Patty Murillo Casa. I am a retired New York City police officer, a 16-year cervical cancer survivor, and a survivor ambassador. I am also survivor wellness and fitness coach. I lead Survivor Slim Down, and I co-lead Survivor Espanol. A little bit about my credentials. I've been in the fitness and wellness space over a decade now. I hold many specialty certifications in various modalities. I reside in New York City with my husband of 26 years, where I am a group fitness instructor, cancer exercise specialist, and a health advocate and educator. So now let me introduce you to our amazing panel. We have our wonderful moderator, Carla Chavez. Yes, Carla. Carla is a civil engineer from Honduras. She's a cervical cancer and thyroid cancer survivor and a proud Assamite. She's also a survivor ambassador and co-leads the Survivor Espanol community. Carla is dedicated to making a difference for women both in her country and globally. And now I'll introduce you to Dr. Lillian Walker Shelton. She's originally from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. She's living in Philadelphia. She develops a desire to work with multicultural populations that have lower socioeconomic statuses. Dr. Walker Shelton has traveled as a member of women's delegations to Central America and the Caribbean. Her writing and research has strongly been influenced by the different people that she has met along the way. Another major influence in Lillian's life was the work that she did as a community activist and organizer in Washington, D.C. A pivotal part of Dr. Walker Shelton activism happened from the loss of her mother to cervical cancer in 1996. When this occurred, it left Dr. Walker and family searching for answers for what happened to her mom. The answer came in 2006 when Lillian met Tamika Felder, the founder of Survivor. The advocacy tools that Dr. Walker Shelton learned from Survivor helped her when she was fighting her own cancer battle. Dr. Walker Shelton is now fighting metastatic breast cancer with the help of her family and friends. Dr. Walker Shelton teaches counseling classes at Trinity Washington University and Marymount University. She has a doctorate in counselor education and supervision. She's an employee assistant counselor and has a small private practice in Silver Spring. Her future goal is to start a community development financial institution. Welcome, Dr. Walker Shelton. Thank you for being here. Next but not least, last but not least, right? Dr. Stephanie Browser. I hope I said those names correctly. If not, I apologize. Dr. Stephanie is a compassionate and dedicated licensed clinical social worker supervisor, advanced certified hospice and palliative care social worker, and certified advanced care planning facilitator and trainer. She earned her master's degree at the University of Texas at Arlington, and she received her doctorate degree at the University of Kentucky. Her research interests focus on addressing disparities in advanced care planning for Black oncology patients to improve palliative and end-of-life care utilization. Stephanie's valuable insights have made her a recognized subject matter expert in her field, leading her to contribute as a published author in the Oxford Press Palliative and Oncology Social Work textbook released in 2024. Stephanie was appointed as the social work representative to the Texas Palliative Care Advisory Council in 2021, an ongoing role she passionately fulfills. She's a dynamic motivational speaker, advocate, and educator. While Stephanie takes great pride in her professional achievements, her most cherished role is being a loving wife to Corey and a devoted mother to her two boys, Corey and Corbin. Stephanie's unwavering passion, expertise, and commitment makes her an invaluable asset in the fields of social work, palliative care, oncology, advocacy, and health equity. She's not afraid of good trouble. Me either, Dr. Stephanie, me either. Through her various roles, she continues to make a profound impact on individuals, families, and communities alike. Welcome, Dr. Stephanie. Thank you to have, it's an honor to have you both being here to share your expertise, your knowledge to our community. Thank you so much. Now I give it to Carla. Carla.
Hello, everyone. I'm excited to be here. I'm most excited, I think, when we were talking about Patty about this one, about mental health and building resilience. I think it's important to all of us who have gone through or are still going through our stages in cancer. So I'm so excited to have Dr. Stephanie and Dr. Lillian here. And to start it up, let's see if in the chat or if you want to come online, can someone tell me how is your energy today? Are we feeling it? How is it from 1 to 10? Let's see. I want everyone. Yeah, I see Lori. She's clapping. That's it, Lori.
Okay,
10.
okay.
Love it. You can also write down in the chat how your energy is, and how about describing a word of how we feel today to see if how we can go into talking in about Dr. Lydia. Well, Tamika, I think you're tired because you have a baby there, a toddler. But yes, I'm loving it. I think anything beyond 1 is great because that means we're getting into it. So listen, I'm just going to share a little bit of knowledge from my nephew who is 5. We were telling him asking him what was his number one favorite thing. He says, I don't have a number one. I have a number zero. And we asked him, why zero? Because zero is the start of all numbers. So I think anything, if it makes us happy, it makes us go on, let's use it. So
Yeah.
let's have a great one. So let's start. Um, let's see, Dr. Lillian or Dr. Stephanie, who wants to go first?
I don't mind getting us started. I'm always so
Go ahead.
excited to join the survivor community, and especially to be able to work alongside Dr. Lillian today, who I admire. So honored to be here. I'm so excited that for this session, you guys decided to talk about mental health and resilience, as I think often, especially in the cancer community, it's one of those taboo topics that you would think we by now have kind of discovered it's important. We have to talk about it. We have to address it. But I still think there's a little bit of a layer of uncertainty and uncomfortability around how we talk about mental health. And so one of the things I would love for us to do as we kind of slide into the conversation, Dr. Lillian, if you would share like a little bit about your perspective around how mental health is even the landscape of how we even navigate resilience and care when we're navigating our cancer care.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Dr. Stephanie, for that question. And thank you, Carla and Patty so much for the warm introduction. When you read that, Patty, I'm like, who, me? Is that really me? But so I think when we talk about navigating the landscape of mental health for people with cancer, there's a couple of multiple different factors that we have to think about. We have to think about like us, the cancer patient that is dealing with the cancer and our mental health. Then I think important factors are the mental health of our caregivers that are helping us, and then even the mental health of the people who are part of our support network. And, all three of these things are like factors. In recent years, what I've seen these things be addressed better. I can say in 1996, well, my mother was first diagnosed with cervical cancer in 1992, but she succumbed to it in 1996. There was not a lot of information about mental health. Well, in fact, I don't think there was anything. And, for us, because I was her caregiver, I didn't see anything about mental health. But then also too, I didn't see anything for her as a person who was going through cancer at that time for mental health. There was a social worker at the hospital when she entered hospice, but before that, there was no other engagement that I saw. So I think now when we look at like just the strides, the innovations that have been made for, those three different populations that I was talking about, I think that that's really important.
Absolutely. I think one of the things that shocks me at my previous employer, one of the things we did was a study in asking our patients about their perception about cancer and what is expected with the journey. And one of the things that was really like really concerning to me was that there was an expectation of emotional suffering that was a par for the course. And what I mean by that is that people expected that they should have anxiety and depression, that they should, that is just what happens when you have cancer. Not that it's not something that we need to navigate, not that it's something that we need to cope with, but they just felt it was something they had to endure. And I think it's really important, as you mentioned, that like we reached a place now where we're assessing in our oncology settings, we're assessing for behavioral health needs, we're assessing for anxiety and depression, but oftentimes it's underreported, even though the clinicians are asking. And so I think it's really important that we're having these conversations so that we can, first of all, dispel the myth that it is just expected that you endure and suffer. Cancer sucks, it is big trash, but the reality is that we want to make sure that we get access to the support and dispel the idea that you cannot get access to depression or anxiety support, or that if you're feeling those things, you're less than.
Yeah, I think it's just this kind of thing, like, you're just supposed to kind of like suffer in silence or, not complain or, all these other things about it. And it's just like, no, when I think about like, being a caregiver and what I went through, as a young person, as a teenager, and then a young adult, the mental strife and how it was really overwhelming for me. But then, even as an adult now, I'm someone with metastatic breast cancer. And, if I tell everyone, even though I am a therapist, I have a therapist. I
Yep.
meet with my therapist every Wednesday. It's funny, my students and my clients think that I talk to them. I mean, I talk to my therapist about them. Like, girl, don't you not have a life? But so, but yeah, I talk about my cancer. I talk about what I'm going through and everything, and what's happening with me. But there are a lot of people who don't. And I think the other thing about it is to bring it back to you, Dr. Stephanie. I think not talking about it is not good also, because if you're not talking about it, then maybe you're also not advocating for yourself.
Absolutely.
And when you get in the room with the doctor and it's like, how do you feel? I'm okay. How's everything? All right. You can't wait to get out of that room, but there's something that's not right and you're not saying anything about it. So I'll kick it back to you with that.
Yeah, no, I think that's a really good point. First of all, I love that you said every therapist has a good thing. Every good therapist has a therapist. That's a fact. Because you have to have a place to drop some of those things when you take on other things, because you have your own life, but also the cares and worries of others. But I think one of the things I would hope that we could do today is talk a little bit about how do you help identify when you are experiencing anxiety versus just regular stress and worry versus regular just sadness and just shock related to the diagnosis or coping versus depression, because I think sometimes people don't know when they should be concerned or when they should alert their provider or seek out help because they don't even know the symptoms in the first place.
Yeah, I think it's a tough thing, because here's the thing. You can go to Dr. Google for some things, okay? Because because it gets people go to Dr. Google and they'll go to Dr. Google and say, "Oh, I Googled it and I'm depressed. Oh, I
Yeah.
Googled it and I have ADHD. Oh, I go," and I'm like, But some things, there's actually a really good video on YouTube that talks about like what is mental health, and it's from the World Health Organization, and it talks about how we all have mental health and how like being under stress and being overwhelmed can eventually lead to mental illness. And I think that's what more people have to understand. Being in this situation, it can really turn it around, and but you can get help, you can get support. And if this is interfering with your life, if it's interfering with your sleep, your appetite, you are isolating, if you're getting like feedback from people that you're just not yourself, so that's the external thing. But then the internal thing is those things about appetite and sleeping and just feeling distressed, then it may be time to talk to someone.
Absolutely. And I think that's the biggest thing, right? For us to empower and equip people with the skills to be able to help themselves, and be empowered when they're navigating just with their care providers about what are the things that are concerning. Sometimes we know when we just don't feel well, when we just don't feel like ourselves. But when you're experiencing all the other symptoms like fatigue and all the things that come with treatment, it can be confusing about like, what is it that I'm really feeling? And sometimes we talk about like when I'm training other clinical social workers, we talk about the difference between depression and symptoms related to treatment or a diagnosis. But oftentimes it's about also teaching our patients to how to identify that in themselves. And so I think you called out, of course, the big ones where we think about like how our diet and our appetite has that been impacted? Has our sleep been disturbed? Or maybe we're sleeping more because we kind of want to shut out from the world. One of the things I also like to talk about is that numbness. I believe sometimes numbness is how we survive or exist through some things when our body and our brain is trying to protect us because we can't regulate some of those things. And so numbness can be a protective factor, but also it can be harmful if we're not addressing it. We're just holding on to those things rather than being able to face and process what's happening. And so someone asked in the chat, how do you identify when we have anxiety? And so I would say it's excessive worrying, right? When you're not able to stop worrying and when that worrying impacts your day-to-day life. So for example, you're not able to kind of do work because you're just worrying and you're just ruminating on things. Maybe you're restless or irritable. People are like, oh, you're so quick-tempered, or you're just kind of on edge. But also if it's impacting your interpersonal relationships, like Dr. Lillian was saying, where people just see that change in you, but also when you can't control it, you can't stop it. Stress is normal in a human experience, but it is when that worry consumes you and it starts to impact your body, you start to have a physical response to that, is also when we want to try to get some support. Um, and Dr. Liddy, I don't know if you saw, somebody dropped into the chat, toxic positivity for me was equally as damaging. And if you've ever heard me talk anywhere in the world, you know that toxic positivity gets under my skin. I feel like it is one of those things that the cancer community got wrong. And we haven't really equipped people with the ability to hold the ambivalence of hope and anger or, gratitude and fear. We have to act like you just have to be positive. Nobody ever said thank you for cancer. Even people who've been able to see or find the meaning or make meaning from the circumstances, no one ever said great. They're grateful for that experience. It may have gifted them something and they've been able to get something from it. But I hate that society has taught us that we have to be just hopeful all the time. When people are angry, they're sad, they're disappointed, they're frustrated. So I love that somebody called that out.
And and also what you bring up, Dr. Stephanie, when you say people are sad, they're disappointed, they're going through these things. I think a lot of what we don't talk about in cancer is just like, you are alive and we're grateful. We're grateful to be alive, but there is still a lot of mourning and loss that we experience when we go through cancer. I think that when I talk to people who have not had the cancer experience, that's their thing about it. And they're like, well, you just had to do this and you're fine, right? You just had to have a double mastectomy and you're fine, right? You just had to have chemo and all your hair fell out and you're fine, right? And it's just like, or the case with some people, like you just had to give up your fertility and you're fine. And it's like, no, I'm really not, and I'm really going through a lot of grief and everything and the loss. So I think that, the expectation that people have that you can go through this grief, you can go through this loss, and then after that, you're like, this was wonderful. It's just unfair. It's
Yeah.
unfair, but it's just something that, like I said, it's really considering the mental health sometimes of the caregiver and the people around us that's why we have to behave that way.
Yeah, I would love to hear from the group. I'm Carla, flag me down when you're ready for me to stop. But I would love to hear from the group about like how do you guys navigate the stress and anxiety? What are some coping skills that you guys put in place? One of the things that I often am so honored to be able to serve in the cancer community. I am a clinician. I am a human who walks alongside other people who have cancer, and I have loved people with cancer, but I have not had the experience myself. And so I don't negate the fact that you guys are the experts. I just am gifted with the opportunity to help walk alongside you. So what are some of the things that y'all are doing to help cope? And what are some techniques you would love to share with the group?
Anne wrote down, he says, I recently spoke with someone about integrative medicine and therapy as a part of that. I wish that was offered when I was diagnosed and a patient. I feel like it would have given me coping tools for survivorship.
They didn't bring me to here today to talk about palliative care and integrative care, but if it, I agree 100%. I wish everyone had
Yes.
access. I wish we could start with that approach, understanding that that is how we provide great care. Uh, but I agree.
How would you address this with your doctors? For example, I know that some of us live in rural areas. In my country, for example, we don't have access to a psychiatrist during treatment or a psychologist or a therapist. We just go through treatment. But in rural areas in the US, I know this happens as well. How would you address this with your doctor to see if there's any way they can help you? Because I know anxiety from the start is there. You can feel it.
I don't know if that, oh, go ahead.
Well, I think the thing about it is like, we do go back to that advocacy thing, and trying to be, advocate for yourself. Sometimes you can address it with your doctor and tell them about it, depending on your relationship with your doctor. But if you're trying to see a therapist, most of the times the best place is to start through your insurance. So you can go through your insurance, see who your insurance has. Back in the day, I remember when I first had a job at the phone company, if you had a great big book with all the insurance providers in it, but now you can just even look online to find a provider, and everything. So you can go through there. There also is the website, the American Oncological Society of Social Workers. Dr. Stephanie, you probably know about that, where they have a whole like website of people who are social workers who specialize in cancer patients. You can check on there and maybe contact someone if you're interested in seeing them for therapy. That's another great way to look at it. But I think that, in rural areas, what we know and what happened during the pandemic is because of virtual therapy and telehealth therapy, things opened up a lot more. So if you are in a more rural area of the country, you can probably still see a therapist. You just have to go through telehealth. So when you're looking even through your insurance, you can see if the provider is a telehealth provider.
Yeah, I would agree. I think also just thinking about different organizations sometimes have options to where they have some providers, they developed a directory of available providers. I always say start with your oncologist first to make sure that they understand the need is there, right? Not only is that about advocacy for yourself, but it also makes sure that they can explore as they grow and think about how to provide care for patients that is a need that people have. And so it's advocacy for yourself, but advocacy also for others. The other thing, the reason why I say let your providers know is because sometimes, depending on the structure of the organization, there are partnerships, there are relationships that are in place, and sometimes they can help make that referral for you. But there are also a lot of behavioral health entities that are oncology specific that are popping up that provide virtual services to Dr. Lillian's point as well. And so some of them are, I can name a few. I'm not sure if I can do that if that's appropriate here, but there's some like Adjuvant or Corella or Jasper, some of those different entities that provide talk. Psychiatry also is not oncology specific, but provides access to psychiatrists and licensed clinical social workers, and they cover the whole country. And so there are a lot of avenues for especially rural communities to get access when there isn't someone embedded in their community.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, and it just depends on, see, I get treatment at Georgetown Hospital in DC. So it is like a whole team. There is a social worker who's there. There is a case manager there. There's a dietitian who's there. But you're right, Carla, if you're in a more rural community at a hospital there, it may
Right.
not be the same thing. So how do you get that help? And just reaching out from the internet and just being an advocate for yourself is helpful.
Absolutely.
Thank you for answering that. You also talked about how sometimes your body does like you want to sleep more, the numbness and everything. Trying to identify these sometimes it's hard, I understand that, but when you do, how can you cope with them or how can you explain to your loved ones what you're going through? Because uh, I don't know if this happens to everyone, but sometimes you tell them, I just don't feel like it today. And we're like, come on, you survived cancer. Oh, come on, you already did it. And but it's hard to explain it to them that your body is still, numb in some parts. I would,
I think I think one of the things, especially in survivorship, that people often, when I'm supporting individuals and their families, talk about is that their families don't understand that survivorship does not mean that the impact of cancer has stopped. So that means that the physical impact, the emotional impact, I may be extremely grateful that I have had the outcomes that I've had, but that does not mean my body is not still having neuropathy or I'm not still having symptom burden that also can have an emotional impact. And so the first thing I will always tell people is to be honest. You teach people how to treat you, and oftentimes people love us so much that they try to show up for us, but they may not be equipped with what we need.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And so it means advocating for yourself, even with your family and loved ones, saying those tough things, saying, hey, this is where I am and I'm struggling. And sometimes you can't find the words. So you need somebody like myself or Dr. Lillian to help bridge that gap, to help you find the words to be able to convey to them, or even act as a mediator when you're having those family sessions to try to figure out what those things are. Because people don't always know how to respond. They may love you and just want you to get to the you that may not even exist anymore. And so they are grieving too, because they are grieving that version of you that isn't there. And so if you are not honest with them about what your needs are and where you are, they can't serve you well. But the hardest part about that, I believe, is you have to be honest with yourself. And that sometimes means having deep, introspection about what is it that I'm feeling? What am I grieving? What am I holding, right? What am I not addressing in regards to the loss or grief that's associated with where I am with my diagnosis?
Yeah, I mean, I absolutely agree with Dr. Stephanie. And I think, the thing about cancer, it will really make you create some new boundaries. And, for some people, even to say boundaries and say the word is triggering, like, what does that mean? Boundaries, and it's like, boundaries, and it really will make you like do that because you're not the person that you were before this treatment. You are going through something. You are tired. You do need a break, but it's hard to admit it. And then people will say, well, darn, it's just a whole bunch of things. And that's where, like I said, the mental health of those three different populations really come in. But you probably like, well, it's like Dr. Stephanie said, you may need the help of someone family counseling, a mediator to come in there and help you explain how you feel so that you can be honest about it. Or maybe you just know the person that you're dealing with, how to be able to best communicate with them. But I think that part of the whole healing process, it can be to really try to communicate your boundaries because, yeah, you're tired and you need a break. And a lot of times, in order to heal, you have to go to sleep and you need rest.
I love that you said boundaries because people talk about self-care, but they forget that boundary setting is an act of self-care. We talk a lot about, bubble baths and massages and all those things, which are great, but like real self-care is that comprehensive self-care that takes care of all of our well-being. And so boundary setting is one of those things, advocacy, all those kind of things are self-care. So I love that you talked about boundaries. And I think when I think about like resilience, I often struggle a little bit because I think people often think that we're just automatically resilient. And I believe resiliency is a skill. Sometimes we learn it from lived experiences, from the human experience, but sometimes we have to be taught, or sometimes we have to cultivate it like a muscle. Like we have to be intentional about lifting that weight to try to figure out how do I develop what I need to be able to cope and navigate through everything that's happening. And so, especially with boundaries, that means sometimes people have to be taught how to set boundaries because maybe they came from a family that didn't have them, or they were penalized if they served themselves or thought about their own well-being, or from a cultural dynamic where it's not safe to think about my own individual needs.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's absolutely true, and I think that's what we see a lot of times in counseling, and that's why we like try to help people to approach it from a different way. A lot of times I work with people on I mean, almost every day. We work on trying to talk about how I can have boundaries with my partner, with my children, with my boss, with my sister. How can I be? Because people are very anxious about it, and this is just for people who may not be experiencing something like cancer. So you can imagine that added layer, but I think it's just sometimes it's social media, it's other messages that people get. They're like, oh, they're cancer warriors, they're cancer superheroes,
Yeah.
they're cancer, all these things. And it's just like, but we're still very, very human,
Yeah.
and we're still very much going through something. And just like a human, I need a break and I need support. Yeah. I just want to go to what what Lori said in the chat, like my family equals Catholic guilt every day. And it's like, Lori, I can identify with that. I'm Catholic and my family has the same thing going on too. That it's just like, like just chin up and just kind of suck it up and just march on. So I can definitely get that.
Yeah. I think culturally, there are religious groups, there are cultural groups that's the perspective, right? Like you push through, you pick your head up and you push through. And I think sometimes we can find source of power in those tropes as far as like the superwoman or the warrior or the fighter. But they can also be really harmful because if I'm not feeling like a fighter, do I feel like I have a space in the community? If today I feel weak and I'm trying to navigate hopelessness and all of those things, do I feel like there's a space for me if I'm supposed to be a warrior? And I think that's why we have to be very careful with some of those labels as you spoke to, because it could be harmful for people who are trying to feel seen and they don't identify themselves. And even I've had therapy patients who are like, I'm not a survivor. Like, I don't like the term. Like, right now, I don't feel like a survivor. And I may look at them and support them like a survivor, but I don't call them a survivor if that's not how they see themselves. And I think those are the kind of things that we have to be mindful of is meeting people where they are, but also giving space for all the nuances of how people can feel and see and be when they're navigating cancer. I saw somebody else make a comment too earlier. I was trying to keep it in my thing. Y'all are doing good in the chat. I think it was Lori. She said, in terms of coping, when you dedicate 7 days a week to advocacy to give back, also to cope, it can at times feel like I'm bearing my own emotional impact by carrying others. Sometimes you wake up and wonder who's carrying my needs. It feels selfish, and I bury that too. Lori, Dr. Lillian, do you have a response?
Well, I think that, the thing about it is that I don't know, and it happens so many times for us as women, we get this message that like caring for our needs, that self-care is selfish. And it's really not. It's really not caring for yourself, saying, I want to be healthy. I'm sorry, I can't do this for you right now. is not selfish. And I think that, you know, we have to really just, but we have to practice it. We have to try to work on it. And then, you know, sometimes for us, we do it, we assert that boundary. And then after that, you know, people, we feel guilty, you know, so it really just does take practice and everything. But then, yeah, I think also too, for some people, what they may do, they're like, well, I'm out here doing all this stuff for other people because also I may not be sure how to process my feelings about what's going on because it's really just so overwhelming. And you know, and that's just another thing too. And sometimes when we are sitting still, when we are quiet, you know, that's when the voices start to come in of what's really going on in our life. And we may feel really, really overwhelmed. So, you know, reaching out to get help is important.
Absolutely. I think one of the things, I keep saying one of the things, and so it's like now the 20th thing. Um, but I often sit with people who have turned their experience into advocacy and they feel obligated to do something with this time, obligated to serve, obligated to support others because they now have this time and renewed perspective or, you know, awareness. And so I first just want to just free everybody that if all you do is survive, that is enough. That is a lot. You don't owe anybody anything. Your gratitude is not wrapped up in your action. Your worth is not wrapped up in your contributions. You alone, if you never do a single thing, are worthy as you are today without change, without exception. And I think that's so important for us all, regardless of what we're carrying. The human experience is hard and it's trash. So, regardless of what we're carrying, I think it's so important that we get those reminders that I owe, like, it's great. I'm a church girl, you know, I believe in service, I believe in serving others. It is what my life's work is, but it is not all that I am. And so, if I don't do another thing, I'm still worthy. I'm enough and I deserve love, not for my contributions, but just for who I am. And, and so I think sometimes for those who serve others while navigating, you know, their own experience, instead of supporting their needs, it's like I'll focus on everybody else. And sometimes it helps us endure, right? It gives us a positive distraction, but it is what you do with your stuff in the meantime. If you pick up everybody else's and you never hold your own bag, lady, you gonna hurt your back. That's what the prophet Erykah Badu said. But that's the truth. If you pick up everybody else's bags and you're still holding your own, eventually you will run out of capacity. And
Well,
so we have to care for ourselves.
and I'm sorry, Dr. Stephanie, I didn't mean
Oh,
to
you're good.
interrupt you. Okay, okay. Well, there's a book. I first learned about it from Audre Lorde's book, The Cancer Journals, but she references this book called Getting Well Again by Dr. Carl Simonton. And it's an interesting book. It's from the 70s, but Dr. Simonton talks about how their research at the time talked about this correlation that they saw with people who had cancer, and these people were givers. They were very selfless. They put a lot of people in front of themselves. And you know, and that this was kind of they were getting at this emotional connection to cancer with which they were seeing and everything. And I encourage people to still check out the book. I mean, even though the research is from the 70s and you know it's not as like dated, but still there's a lot of really good mind body techniques that are there that they talk about, you know, really you can use in your healing and developing coping skills. But you know that is something that we've always tried to see, like what is even, you know, the connection that we have of our feelings to how our physical health is impacted with the cancer.
Absolutely. Oh, that's so good. That's so good. Carla, did you want to pivot to a question? If not, we can
Yeah.
keep talking,
I
but
have another one. There have been
okay.
really sent questions here. It says, what are healthy daily habits that I can use to support my mental health if I notice that I'm declining maybe or I'm going into anxiety? What mental habits or daily habits, sorry.
I believe it's really important for us to just develop a really just great self-care routine that is not based on how we feel, but it's a routine that is established of things that we know supports us. And so, for example, things like grounding are really powerful. It is literally where you put your feet to grass, you put your feet to the earth to center yourself. I believe in affirmations. I believe that the most powerful voice and the loudest voice that you should hear should be your own, and it should be that affirming you and reminding you of who you are and what you are and whose you are. but also journaling can be really impactful. Sometimes like writing and emptying out those things that you were maybe afraid to say or haven't even processed, but just writing until you're done, like a brain dump. But then also there are a lot of tools like journal prompts and different resources that can help you with guided processing if you need some support as well. And so those are kind of the few go-tos that I have and recommend for others, but I'd love to hear what Dr. Lillian has as well.
Well, I mean, I think that, it's interesting. Before we all came on, we were all talking about drinking water. And, Patty was like, go ahead, Dr. Lynn. So I got my big water jug over here and everything like that. I see Carla, I see you sipping it and everything. But, drinking water is definitely an important thing and really part of your physical health, but then also part of your mental health. But I think that what in this busy world that we live in, part of what we need to do is really label things intentionally as self-care. I work with so many people and they're like, I'm busy. I get up in the morning, I gotta get the kids to school, I gotta go to work, I gotta go over here, I gotta go to, and I'm like, okay, what time do you have for self-care? I don't have any time. And so what I try to say, and it's kind of, I really like what Dr. Stephanie said, is if you get in the habit of doing this, and everything, then you don't have to make as much of a pivot and as much of a change. As they say, if you stay ready, you don't have to get ready. So, if you can say to yourself, like, okay, this is my self-care thing and it's healthy, even if it is before I go in this school to get my kids, I'm going to sit in this car for 5 minutes and listen to my favorite song. This is my self-care thing. Before I go in the house today, I'm going to walk down to the mailbox. And when I walk down to the mailbox, I'm going to breathe. I'm going to look around at the trees. I'm going to look up at the sky. And this is my self-care thing. It's really how you are just able to even label it and just look at it in your mind because there are so many things going on. And what I find, and Dr. Stephanie, I'll kick it back over to you too, is that, we make these kind of like self-care goals. And, and when we don't achieve them, Patty, you probably know from the Survivor Slim Down, when people make these goals and they don't achieve them, they're like, I'm just the worst person in the world. And it's like, hey, it's okay. We don't have to do all that. What we can just say is like, let's make a realistic goal that we can do. And that realistic goal may be, I am going to just stand on the steps of my house for 5 minutes and play Candy Crush. And this is my time for myself. And wow, oh, this is just such a wonderful time that I'm thinking about myself and no one else. So that is, Dr. Stephanie, I'd like to hear your thoughts on it too. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. And I think also sometimes that means exploring new things. Because sometimes what we thought gave us comfort may not be what we need for this season. So being open to new ideas and exposing ourselves to new activities could be really helpful. I recently had a patient who picked up what is it called? Where you not pottery. Yeah, it's pottery where you make clay. Is that what it is? Okay, pottery.
Yeah.
And for her, it was just something powerful and soothing about the idea of molding, and that even when it became disfigured, there was still something valuable of it, and she could, construct it in the way that was meaningful for her. But somebody just gave her a free coupon to this pottery class, and now it's become this thing for her, and it's something she's implemented into her life that she finds a lot of value in. And so I just think it means what always resonates with you and what's always worked may not be that thing, but be open to trying those new things. But also being, once you assign a value to it, that it is for self-care. But I also can't speak enough about rest. Rest is
That was one of my questions. Okay, okay.
rest
Love
is
it.
powerful. Rest, and it's not just about sleep. The rest, when you are able to, sometimes you're not even sleep, but you're resting your mind, you're resting your body, you're preserving your energy. That is something that's really powerful. And I believe the only way we refuel ourselves is to actually get true rest. Doing nothing.
Doing nothing is kind of hard sometimes because sometimes your mind goes on and on and on, but I really like that. I like it, rest. And I think Ann and I also agree with this part. It says that it resonates with her as well, that we think what we want may not be what we need in this season.
Yeah.
Because sometimes you change. You're in evolution every day. Like
Absolutely. I heard somebody tell a story about like if you put on a shoe And when you're like a size 5, that shoe will operate as protection for you. It will be comfort so that you're not harming the bottom of your feet when you're walking on the ground. But if you grow to a size 7 and you keep on that size 5 shoe, it dwarfs your feet. It can harm your toes. It can impact your ability to walk properly. And so sometimes we grow past our current coping skills. And so that means we have to cultivate new ones because in its current state, they might not be sufficient enough to meet what we need. And so I'm a church girl. I love to meditate and pray. It's what I do to kind of center myself every day. But in certain phases of life, I had to put a little extra on that thing because that wasn't enough. I had to try to add something to try to anchor myself a bit more. So I maybe had to start journaling a bit more or, doing some physical things to increase endorphins for myself or challenge myself about my thinking or ideology about my personhood. And so sometimes we just have to be more creative and open to other things because our body, ooh, somebody said moving your body. And I know Miss Patty loves that. Move your body.
Yeah, I have always loved to go to sleep. And now that I have metastatic breast cancer, no one complains about how I like to go to sleep. So, because before it was like, you sleep too much. I'm like, yeah, mind your business. But now, I do it and no one says anything at all and anything. But no, it is what Stephanie said. It's not just even sleeping. It's just sometimes just taking it easy, just watching something stupid on TV, just unplugging, resetting, doing all these different things that will really allow you to rest. And I think that kind of goes back even to what we were talking about earlier, Carla. Like sometimes we need assistance in telling our family, like, hey, I need to rest. So can someone else cook dinner tonight? Can, someone else take the trash out? Someone else help with these kids, and everything. So yeah, it could be rest is very, very important. And sometimes we even have to get support in how we tell people that we need it.
Yeah. And I even help people, of course, in palliative care, one of the things we do is help people develop like sleep hygiene, where we help to cultivate a routine around teaching our body how to rest. Because somebody said it's not easy. I think Carla, you said that. When your brain is running and it's consumed with all the worries and uncertainty, it is very difficult to teach your body to respond to anything but that. And so it is just like we talked about training the muscle as far as our resilience, teaching our body how to reset and rest when it's been in heightened state of stress. And we have all of that cortisol. We have to literally retrain it how to relax and decompress. And so sometimes we talk about what do you do? How do you train your body that it's time to start, shutting down? And so maybe it's you dim the lights, you no longer use your phone, take a bath, light a candle, just put on particular PJs, drink a tea. Like there's a routine that you help to create some sleep hygiene for yourself.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
love.
I think the important thing to really do when I work with people with that, especially people who have issues sleeping, is that, like back to that thought labeling, like, okay, once I start doing these things for the evening, this means I'm shutting it down. So it's
Yeah.
like this means that, okay, like for me, every day I will disclose to all you guys, like I say the rosary before I go to sleep. So like once I start saying the rosary, that means I'm shutting it down. The phone is going on do not disturb. I'm not talking to nobody. I'm not looking at anything else on social media. Even when I talk to my friends, I'm like, okay, I'm about to say my prayer. They know what that means. Don't. I gotta get off this phone. So that's what it is. So it's just like I think that and then you can even do more before when you're brushing your teeth to go to sleep. That means I'm shutting it down even more. Like just kind of really just thinking like these are all because when we get up in the morning, we say, okay, well, I got to get my coffee to get ready to go to work. I got to get my clothes out to get ready to go to work. We do all these things in our mind that way. Do we do all these things in our mind to say, okay, I'm doing all these things to get ready to go to sleep? We kind of have to do that too, especially if we struggle with going to sleep at night.
Absolutely. One of the things somebody mentioned in the chat is that how do you make yourself sleep? Up usually 3 days a week for many years. Brain is hyper focused from the minute I lay down. Also, we see sometimes treatment can cause insomnia, depending on the type of treatment you're on, can cause insomnia. And so the first thing I'll say, if you have had prolonged insomnia several nights or you're not able to sleep, you're not getting, your body cannot heal, it cannot do what it needs to do, and as much as we don't want to introduce something else, it is okay to talk to your provider about your inability to sleep. Sometimes there's natural supplements that can help. I am not a physician. My doctor is a clinical social worker. It is not a medical doctor, so I will not give advice on supplements. But there are a lot of some natural supplements that can help with sleep regulation. But also sometimes you do need a prescription to help your body reset. Remember our brain is chemicals and things are happening, and so sometimes we need something to kind of just reset our brain just a little bit to help us sleep, especially if you're kind of like rapid, like just ruminating and you can't slow your brain down.
Yeah, it can become another physical health issue. And so because can become another physical health issue, it's good to talk to your primary care doctor about it and get some help and some assistance.
Absolutely.
Yeah. They did share some other coping for anxiety and stress. For example, Morgan said she likes doing puzzles, which for her is very meditating. Claudia and I are the same. We love getting out of the house. If we could move. Anne talks about naps, that she loves naps. And Tamika says comfy and cute PJs. Me too, Tamika.
Yeah.
So
I
I think
also
that,
said wine. I also said wine.
wait, how could I miss wine? That was the best.
Yes.
And I'm so tired now. It doesn't even take a lot. I just need 2 sips and I'm out.
But I think I think everybody had so many great ideas in the chat. I think the point is that there are a lot of resources out there, and sometimes we just don't know how to engage them or leverage them. And so I think spaces like this do a lot. Not only do they create community for us, which is another self-care opportunity, is creating community, but it also helps us learn things that maybe we hadn't considered. I'm sure we all considered wine before, but maybe you hadn't considered rain apps or an audio book to help you sleep. They actually have sleep stories in some of the meditation apps. They have guided meditations. I've actually done some cancer specific guided meditations. Like there are things that are really helpful that maybe you just haven't thought about before. One thing I wanted to make sure we talked about I had made a note when we were talking earlier in regards to just coping and self-care. Um, we talk a lot about mindfulness, we talk a lot about meditation, but one of the things that I have been working a lot with people on is, and I think Miss Patty put it in our notes, and I'm so glad, but like redefining. And Dr. Leland, you talked about grief, and we do a lot of that, acceptance commitment therapy where we talk about, navigating the grief, but sometimes we get lost in trying to, well, let me speak for myself. Sometimes I walk alongside people who are struggling with redefining who they are, their as far as identity, their role, while also trying to show up and carry their things as they process and navigate survivorship. And so I would love to hear kind of like your thoughts when you immediately hear that, as far as people redefining themselves and figuring out what they do, who they are as an act of self-care and even empowerment, as they navigate survivorship.
Yeah, I mean, I think and to take into account also too, like what you were saying about people, some people don't want to be labeled as a survivor. Some people want to just look at this as like, this is just a chapter in my life, and after this chapter in my life, I'll move on to another chapter in my life. And that's fine too, and that's part of your identity too. But I think that going back to the whole thing of resilience and everything, resilience is also even tied in with our identity and looking at this as like an experience, like, okay. I had this experience. This was not an easy experience. I was able to get through this experience. So now this is part of my identity to know that I can get through hard things and I can do tough stuff. Doesn't mean I'm a warrior, doesn't mean I'm a superhero or anything like that, but it just adds to my resilience that I can get through hard things. Because yeah, not everyone wants to be in a parade. Not everyone wants to do a walkathon. Not everyone wants to write a book or have a nonprofit organization. Some people just want to live, but I think at that level, we can just say you can know and live and be part of your identity to know that you did something very difficult.
I love that so much, like reshaping an identity, part of your identity being that I can do hard things. It doesn't matter that the thing is, overcoming cancer. It is that I can do hard things. If that doesn't want, it's not the label you want, you get to decide what that label is, if you want to label at all. But it's that you're adding that to the perspective of who you are. And I feel like every time I talk to Survivor, we're talking about worthiness, and we're talking about, but I feel like it all goes back to that sometimes when we think about what we say to ourselves about ourselves when we're navigating and trying to figure out how to carry all the things, right? Just of the human experience, the depression, anxiety, the worry, the fear. Um, Sometimes if we just get to the basics of knowing that we are enough and worthy and can see that in ourselves and see ourselves as capable of doing hard things and honoring the time and the endurance and honoring ourselves for that, I think it would help reset the narrative so much. But it seems like it's really a difficult task for people to be able to see that in themselves.
Yeah, I mean, I think part of it, when you get cancer, you're like, why is this happening to me? You really go through that. And I remember for me with breast cancer, I went and I had a mammogram. I've had mammograms at that point for 4 or 5 years. And then they called me and they were like, oh, we want you to come back for, a diagnostic mammogram. And I almost said to them, like, you got the right number because I don't have to come back there because but and then when they told me by the time of the end the diagnostic mammogram, I was just pretty much in tears because I was just like, wow, this is really what is happening and everything like that. So you do go through this thing, and that is part of the whole mental complex of it. Like, why am I dealing with this? Why is this happening to me? A really good friend of mine who is actually on here right now, I see my friend Mia's on here. She recommended this book to me by St. Murphy called You Have Been Chosen, where, I haven't gotten through the whole book where Sint talks about like, going through this process and everything like that and being chosen to deal with this and having it like be something that helped build up her resilience and everything like that. So, it's like she says it in a way of like you are worthy of being challenged. That's what it was. But for so many of us, it is going back to like, why did this have to happen to me in the first place?
Yeah. And I think last time I was with Survivor, we talked about shame and shame resilience, and y'all know I feel a little icky about that. But I think it goes back to the idea that there's also some shame in and if how do we handle the shame? How do we handle the perceptions of ourselves? And I would love that to look at that book because I think it speaks to the idea that we have to honor the growth. We have to honor the transitions and the spaces that, people are experiencing ourselves, but also the spaces of others. And there aren't always spaces that teach us how to do that. And so we have to create those moments ourselves. I did something with an AYA or not too long ago, and we literally talked about creating moments for a group that was metastatic disease specific because they won't get to ring the bell. And so, how do you make sure that you're honoring the moments when nobody gives you a hallmark? Nobody takes you to ring the bell. Nobody creates a moment for you. There isn't a hallmark that the Cancer Society says you get. But how do you honor your growth and honor your resilience so that you create those spaces, even if nobody acknowledges them?
Yeah, it's an interesting thing. I mean, because I'm gonna tell you something too, and folks might be like, "Really, Dr. Lilly?" But ringing the bell, if I've had radiation 5 times, and every time I have radiation, they go, "Okay, come on over here and ring this bell." I'm tired of that bell because it doesn't mean anything. I might have to ring the bell again. What does that bell mean? Really and honestly. So it's just like for me, when I go through a treatment, when I go through these things the celebrations I have with my family, with my friends, it could be anything to hallmark it and to say like I was able to go through this next part. But that is something too that, when we go and Dr. Stephanie, I'd like to hear your thoughts on like this thing of anticipatory grief, because that's even just a phrase that I heard the first time I was at the Living Beyond Breast Cancer conference about it. That a lot of people with cancer, because we know about the chance of recurrence, we go through this thing called anticipatory grief, this anticipating a loss again in the future. And and that goes into our mental wellness also.
Absolutely. And I know we're almost at time, but I just will say anticipatory grief is you feel all the things of grief. It is literally the grief that you experience while you are awaiting the shoe to drop, or you are navigating the unknown. And so we see it sometimes. We talk a lot about it, especially in dementia communities of caregivers. They have anticipatory grief, that they go through all the symptoms of grief as a caregiver related to their loved one navigating disease. And so that's when it kind of first emerged. But if you talk about it in the cancer community, the individual themselves, the patient, the person diagnosed with cancer, can have anticipatory grief as a result of not only the real grief of like the moments lost, the time that was adjusted or didn't look the way I intended, but also the moments ahead that I perceive that I might not get to experience, whether it's related to infertility or, giving birth, whether it's related to intimacy or relationships or my body or all those kind of things. You experience grief related to all the unknown. If we're not, especially if we don't have a place to process it or put it, or somebody validate that those feelings are true and real.
Yes.
I was on mute. I'm amazed. Thank you so much. I really wish we could stay on longer, but has been such an amazing talk. I've learned so much. I've taken notes, and I'm so happy that we're recording it because others will be able to see it too. I want to thank you for your time. Thank you for everything you've shared with us. I feel more enlightened and light as well, because now we have to take that guilt away. So thank you so much.
This was an amazing discussion. I thank you, Dr. Stephanie, Dr. Lillian. You've been wonderful. So I tell you, I learned a lot. I did. And I know a little bit about, meditation and journaling and moving the body, but you always bring some light into other things that we don't know about. Thank you so much. So we're ready. Are we ready for prizes, Carla?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Give me a second. Let's see. Do you all see my screen? Do you see it?
No.
Is that the wheel?
No, no wheel.
How about now?
It's probably coming. It's probably still loading.
Oh, now, yes.
Please let me know if all the names are there.
Everybody's name is there.
I don't see Chayton. Psych. I'm just playing. I'm just playing.
We're all here. No one wants to see if I'm not mistaken. So we're good?
Yeah, we're good.
Do you want to tell them what the first
yes,
prize is?
I think Dr. Stephanie mentioned it, journaling, right? A journal in a little book that will lead you to journal even more. So.
Are you ready?
Yes, we're ready.
Let's see. Nikita. Congratulations.
Yes.
Yay, thank you.
You're welcome. I'll reach out to you so you could send me your address so I could send it to you, okay, Nikita?
Okay. Yes.
Okay.
We have another one.
Yes,
congratulations.
Congratulations, Nikita. Another one. This is a beautiful journal, a big journal, big one for like the whole year.
So are we ready?
Yes, we're ready.
Let's go.
There's two Tamikas.
Yeah. Mia.
Congratulations.
Congratulations.
Oh, wow. Thank you.
Congratulations.
Thanks.
Mia will get in touch with you, okay? So I can send this to you. Thank you.
Okay. I appreciate it.
Thank you. And the last one is a book. It's Love After Cancer by Keisha Carter. It's a nice book.
Ready?
Ready.
Marcela.
Oh my goodness. Thank you.
Congratulations.
Marcela.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
When you come back, I'll give it to you, Marcela.
Okay.
Okay.
Can't wait.
Woohoo.
Congratulations to all the winners.
Yay, congrats. And thank you all for participating. Dr. Stephanie, Dr. Lillian, thank you so much for your expertise and your time.
Thank you, everybody.
We're off.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank
Have
you.
a great
Bye.
restful night.
Good
Restful
night.
night, yes.
Bye, Jay.
Okay, good night.
Bye, Shay.
Bye.
Bye, honey.
Aw.
Aw.
Thank
Bye,
you.
Patty.
Bye-bye.